The news alerts flashed across every single screen on the planet. The world froze. And just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
Because on May 6th, 2026, a towering 87-year-old titan of global media passed away peacefully.
And the public reaction was just instant. But cutting through all the corporate statements and the journalistic retrospectives was this incredibly vulnerable, deeply personal tribute from Hollywood icon Jane Fonda.
His ex-wife.
Right. And her statement was just raw emotion.
They divorced. He died. And Jane Fonda's reaction absolutely broke everyone's heart.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is a fascinating one. We are exploring the monumental life and the recent passing of Ted Turner.
The founder of CNN.
Yeah, the creator of Turner Classic Movies, the man they called the Mouth of the South. But we are looking at him through a very specific lens today.
Exactly. We are looking at his complex, deeply affectionate, and honestly somewhat chaotic relationship with Jane Fonda.
Our mission today is to unpack the fascinating contradictions of this man. Because Ted Turner was, well, he was a walking paradox.
He really was.
He revolutionized global media, he rebuilt entire ecosystems, and yet he possessed this hidden vulnerability that forever changed one of Hollywood's biggest stars.
Okay, let's just unpack this right away because I have to push back on the very premise of this tribute for a second.
Move for it.
How rare is it to see such a profound, public, adoring statement from an ex-spouse 25 years after a divorce?
It is almost unheard of.
I mean, they split in 2001, a quarter of a century goes by, and she is writing about him with the passion of a newlywed.
Yeah.
It immediately sets up the core question for you listening. Who exactly was this man behind closed doors?
To understand that, we actually have to go back to how those doors opened in the first place.
Right.
The intimate beginning of their relationship tells you everything you need to know about his personality. The year is 1990. Fonda is going through a devastating split from her second husband, Tom Hayden.
And, word gets out in the press. And Turner, who had met her years earlier and admired her from afar, he doesn't wait around for the dust to settle.
Oh, not at all.
He literally just calls her up. She answers the phone, and she just hears this booming voice on the other end saying, "Is it true?"
And she's like, "Is what true?"
Yeah, and he asks if she's getting divorced and then immediately asks her out.
Which completely derails her. She tells him, "I'm devastated. I'm actually in the middle of a nervous breakdown. Call me in 6 months."
She totally thought he was crazy.
Oh, absolutely. She
Yeah.
figured that was her polite dismissal, and that would be the end of it.
But here is where it gets really interesting. He doesn't call her in 5 months to check in early. He doesn't call her in 7 months because he got busy with his empire. He waits, and he calls her exactly 6 months to the day.
He obliged her request to the letter.
Which is just, wow. I mean, on one hand, it is this incredible romantic patience.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it is the sheer precision of a CEO. It's like he set a calendar alert to close the most important deal of his life.
He was completely ruthless in business.
Yeah.
And he applied that exact same strategic, laser-focused discipline to pursuing her.
And that strategy worked. She agreed to have dinner with him.
But what is fascinating here is the setting of that first real date. You'd expect a billionaire media mogul to send a limousine, right?
Oh, for sure. Fly her to Paris or something.
Yeah, exactly. Pull out all the stops. Instead, she goes out to his ranch in Montana.
She specifically said in her statement that she had no idea what to expect, like limos, caviar, helicopters.
Yeah.
No. He picks her up in a little old Jeep, and they stay in a very modest ranch manager's cabin.
And the moment she actually fell in love with him wasn't over some grand, expensive gesture.
Right.
They were driving around the ranch, getting lost on these dirt roads, and he just looked up at the sky. Way off in the distance, there was a tiny silhouette of a bird flying.
Just a tiny speck.
Yeah, and just from the flight pattern, Turner knew exactly what species of bird it was.
Yeah.
He immediately started talking about its nesting habits, its migration, its biology.
That is wild to me. It takes an obsessive level of observation to identify a speck in the sky just by the rhythm of its wings.
It really does.
This loud, brash TV executive is secretly this deeply observant naturalist. In her Instagram tribute, Fonda called him a gloriously handsome, deeply romantic, swashbuckling pirate who just swept into her life.
She said she was never the same after that.
But if you think about what it actually takes to be a pirate,
Oh boy.
That relentless pursuit, that intense swashbuckling energy, the very things that made him so successful and so magnetic also made him an incredibly difficult husband.
Because the romantic pirate is a great idea until you actually had to live on the pirate ship with him every day.
That is exactly what happened when they tied the knot. They married in 1991 at his Avalon plantation down in Florida, and it was, well, immensely complicated.
Extremely complicated. They separated in 2000 and officially divorced in 2001. And the reasons for the split were multifaceted.
Yeah.
On Fonda's side, she cited his infidelity. She actually accused him of cheating on her just a month into their marriage.
A month in. That is brutal.
It is. And she alleged that the infidelities continued throughout their relationship. They also had fundamental trouble communicating.
Turner himself wrote in his memoir about how they spent too much time apart.
He recalled a moment where their closets faced each other in their bedroom. And when he saw her empty space after she left, he literally sat down on the floor between them and cried.
So there is this profound sadness, but there was also a major ideological clash that finally broke things apart, right?
Yes, a major fracture happened when Fonda converted to Christianity. Turner was deeply upset by this.
Now, we have to be completely impartial here and look at both sides of this.
Of course. In his memoir, Turner clarified that he wasn't necessarily upset that she found religion. He was hurt that she didn't discuss it with him before making the decision.
Right. And then Fonda's side of that story is so telling about their power dynamic. She said she didn't tell him because by that point, she felt they were no longer on the same team.
Yeah.
And she knew that if she brought up her need for spirituality, he would either force her to choose between him and her faith, or he would just verbally steamroll her out of it entirely.
She was terrified of losing her identity. She said she had an angel on one shoulder saying, "He's cute, he's rich, he can take care of you." But the other angel was saying, "You'll regret it. You're never going to become who you can be."
Wow.
So, at 62 years old, having not acted in 15 years, she left.
Okay, I have to stop and ask you a question here. Walk me through this math,
Let's do it.
because this is the part that completely scrambles my brain. How does someone cheat on you a month into a marriage, overpower you to the point where you have to hide your own spiritual awakening, and yet 25 years later, you write a tribute saying, "He gave me confidence"?
It is a massive contradiction.
Right. She even referred to him publicly just days before he died at the TCM Classic Film Festival on April 30th, 2026, as her favorite ex-husband. How does that make any sense?
The math absolutely doesn't work on paper. It's baffling. It really challenges you to look at this and realize that human relationships completely defy black and white moral labels.
They really do.
But the answer lies in a very specific, hidden side of him that only she got to see. In her tribute, she wrote, "No one had ever let me know they needed me."
Right.
She pointed out that society raises women to care for men, but men like Ted, these towering titans of industry, aren't supposed to express need or vulnerability.
That was Ted's greatest strength, I believe. That is what she wrote.
Exactly. To be genuinely needed by someone of that magnitude, a man who had won the America's Cup, who was literally changing the fabric of global communication. She said it was transformative.
It made her believe in herself in a new way.
Yeah. They also built a deeply intertwined blended family. She became a stepmother to his 5 children from previous marriages.
She called them complex kids, noting that if it was complicated to be married to Ted, imagine how complicated it was to be his child.
But she loved them, and they formed this ragtag family.
Mm.
And despite the $40 million divorce settlement, and despite him later admitting he had 4 different girlfriends that he rotated week by week, the love between him and Fonda never faded.
And that is not even the wildest part of his life. Later in the deep dive, we will talk about the shocking twist regarding his environmental legacy that nobody saw coming.
Oh, it is such a huge pivot. But if you are loving these Hollywood twists so far, make sure you are subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
Definitely hit that subscribe button. So when you look at that level of intensity in his personal life, it really gives you a window into the mind of the man himself.
It does.
Fonda called him supremely strategic. She pointed out that he studied the Peloponnesian War in college, and she actually compared his strategic mind to Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan.
And you can see how he took that exact battlefield mentality and applied it to the world of television.
His rise is a classic, albeit chaotic, American business story, and it starts with profound tragedy.
When Turner was just 24, his father, who ran a billboard business, committed suicide. Ted took over the business, diversified it, and learned the core mechanics of selling attention.
And eventually, he bought a struggling UHF television station in Atlanta, Channel 17.
Now, for anyone listening who didn't grow up with a rotary dial on their television, you have to understand that this was not prime real estate.
Not at all. Back then, the main TV dials clicked into place, stopping at the number 13. Those were the powerful VHF stations like your ABC, CBS, NBC.
Right.
Anything above 13 was on the UHF dial.
And the UHF dial didn't click. It was a continuous static-filled dial. You had to painstakingly fine-tune just to get a blurry picture.
It was literally referred to in the industry as the lunatic fringe.
Wow.
The signals were incredibly weak, the viewership was tiny, and people thought you had to be crazy to invest in it.
But Turner's motto seemed to be, if people say it can't be done, plunge right in. He decides he is going to broadcast 24 hours a day. The standard practice was for stations to sign off at night and play the national anthem.
But he didn't want the screen to ever go dark.
So he fills the airtime with whatever cheap content he can get his hands on.
Yeah.
Reruns of old sitcoms, old movies nobody else wanted. He even bought the Atlanta Braves baseball team.
Which is the most genius part of the whole operation.
He really is. Because he didn't buy the Braves because he was a massive baseball fan.
No, he knew absolutely nothing about baseball.
Exactly. He bought the team simply to secure the broadcast rights. He knew that a baseball season has 162 games. That is, hundreds of hours of cheap, reliable content to fill his 24-hour schedule.
It is brilliant. He is building the plumbing and just looking for massive volumes of water to run through it.
Yeah.
And that logic leads directly to his most audacious move of all, the birth of CNN in 1980, the cable news network.
You really have to place yourself in 1980 to remember how radical a 24-hour news network was.
Oh, people thought it was a joke.
The major networks did the news for a half hour in the evening.
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite told you what happened that day at 6:30 p.m., and that was it.
Right.
The idea that there was enough news to fill 24 hours, or that anyone would even want to watch it, was considered absurd.
I think a TV critic at the time said it was like Attila the Hun deciding he's going to do a summer camp for the elderly.
That is hilarious.
I always think of the launch of CNN like building a massive 5,000-room luxury hotel in the middle of a barren desert.
Okay, I can picture that.
Everyone looks at it and says, Ted, you're crazy. There's no water out here. There are no tourists. But he built it anyway, and he essentially invented the modern nonstop news cycle just to fill all those empty rooms.
He created the demand for the product he was supplying.
Exactly. And he almost didn't get the doors open. 3 months before the launch in 1980, they had a massive disaster.
Oh, yeah. RCA, the company providing their satellite transmission, lost CNN's transponder.
And they refused to give them access to another one.
So to use your hotel analogy, imagine building that massive hotel in the desert. But 3 months before opening, the government permanently bulldozes the only highway leading to it.
That is exactly what RCA did. They cut the only transmission road. CNN would be beaming a signal that literally no one could pick up. It was a death sentence for the network.
And how does the swashbuckling pirate react to a death sentence?
He exploded.
He roared at the RCA executives. "This is my blood you're getting. For every drop of blood I shed, you will shed a barrel."
You will shed a barrel. That is pure Genghis Khan energy right there.
He fought his way through the courts, secured the transmission, and launched. And very quickly, the sheer utility of CNN proved its worth.
Like in 1981, when there was an assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan, the situation was completely chaotic. Nobody knew what was happening.
But CNN stayed on the air and beat the major networks to the story by 4 full minutes.
And in the world of breaking news, 4 minutes is an absolute eternity.
It proved the concept worked. People wanted to know what was happening right now.
And then, jumping ahead to 1991, the Gulf War happens. CNN is the only network broadcasting live from inside Baghdad as the bombs are falling.
The entire world, including other world leaders, tuned into Ted Turner's network to see what was happening in real time. He completely changed the global news landscape.
It is just staggering. And remember, if you want to keep exploring these massive Hollywood and pop culture empires, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what is coming next.
Because here is where this story takes a massive turn. It is a huge contradiction.
Yeah.
Because here is a guy who just spent a decade wiring the entire globe, launching satellites into space, and keeping everyone glued to glowing screens.
And suddenly he decides to spend his vast fortune trying to physically dismantle human infrastructure and return the world to silence. This is the irony I want you listening to really sit with. His competitiveness wasn't just about dominating the airwaves anymore. It became about actively reversing human destruction on the Earth.
He wanted to return the physical world to a state of absolute pre-industrial nature.
And he did it on a scale that is honestly hard to comprehend. By the 2010s, Turner owned roughly 2 million acres of land across multiple states.
He was one of America's largest private landowners.
But unlike most developers, he didn't carve it up into subdivisions or ranchettes for wealthy vacationers. He did the exact opposite.
Yeah, he takes his flagship Western property, the Flying D Ranch in Montana, and visitors immediately notice what isn't there.
He ripped out the fences.
He tore down the telephone poles. He removed the human footprint to let the land breathe and heal.
Because he viewed conservation as an active intervention. It wasn't just about leaving a pretty view, it was about repairing broken, degraded systems.
Take the bison, for example. He was fascinated by them since he was a kid reading biology books in Cincinnati. He saw their numbers drop from millions to near extinction.
So he built a private herd of over 45,000 bison.
And these weren't pets. He called them ecological tools to revive the degraded Western rangelands.
Because if you think about how cattle graze, cows tend to stand around water sources and eat grass down to the dirt, which compacts the soil.
Bison are totally different.
Right, bison are constantly on the move. Their sharp hooves aerate the hardpan soil like giant tillers, and their grazing patterns actually stimulate the deep root growth of native grasses.
They don't just live on the land. Their biology actively engineers it back to health.
He applied that same active logic everywhere. At his Avalon plantation in Florida, his programs virtually saved the red-cockaded woodpecker from extinction by actively planting the specific native trees they needed to nest in.
In the Deep South, he planted over 1 million longleaf pines because, as he bluntly put it, historically we cut them all down.
He also threw his wealth at global problems. He famously pledged a staggering $1 billion to create the United Nations Foundation in 1997.
At the time, $1 billion for personal philanthropy was an astronomical, completely unheard of sum.
It supported everything from climate action to public health. He argued that the atmosphere and the oceans were common property, and protecting them isn't just sentimentality, it is a practical survival responsibility.
When you picture that scale of restoration, Jane Fonda's tribute suddenly makes perfect sense.
Remember that beautiful, vivid image she painted at the end of her statement?
She said she sees him in heaven now, and he's not greeted by media executives or politicians.
No, he is greeted by all the species he helped save from extinction.
The black-footed ferrets, the prairie dogs, the bighorn sheep, the Mexican gray wolf, the bison, the woodpeckers, all gathered at the pearly gates, applauding and thanking him for saving their species.
It is an incredibly powerful image, but it also serves as a poignant reminder. Even a man who could see around corners, who could race yachts through deadly storms, who could build global empires and save endangered species.
He eventually faces a battle he cannot outstrategize.
And that takes us to his final years. In 2018, Ted Turner was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, or LBD.
Lewy body dementia is the second most common form of dementia, right behind Alzheimer's. And if you look at the mechanism of the disease, it is particularly cruel.
Yeah.
It is caused by protein deposits called Lewy bodies that develop in nerve cells in the brain. They essentially hijack the brain's communication network.
Which is devastating for a man whose entire identity was built on speed, strategy, and having a razor-sharp memory of the battlefield.
Exactly. This disease specifically targeted his greatest weapons. It severely affects thinking, memory, and movement.
People with LBD commonly have physical symptoms similar to Parkinson's disease, like rigid muscles, slow movement, and tremors.
The average lifespan from diagnosis to death is about 5 to 7 years. Turner gave an interview shortly after his diagnosis, and it is deeply vulnerable to watch.
This is the mouth of the South, a guy known for never lacking a word, never losing an argument.
And in the interview, he struggles to even remember the name of his disease.
Yeah.
He says, it's a mild case of what people have as Alzheimer's. I can't remember what my disease is.
He eventually remembered the word dementia. But he summarized his daily reality in a way that is so stark for a man who used to have boundless, uncontainable energy.
He said his main symptoms were tired, exhausted, and forgetfulness.
That disease slowly took him away over the next several years, leading to his passing on May 6th, 2026, surrounded by his family.
So what does this all mean for us today? When you synthesize all the facets of Ted Turner, you are left with a figure of massive historical consequence.
He was an incredibly flawed, fiercely competitive media mogul who permanently altered human society by creating the 24-hour news cycle.
But he was also a tender, deeply vulnerable partner who forever changed Jane Fonda's
And
life.
he was a passionate, hands-on environmentalist who dedicated his fortune and his land to healing the physical planet.
It is a lot to hold in your head at once. But remember this, every single time you check a 24-hour news feed on your phone, or every time you hear a corporation talking about environmental responsibility and carbon footprints, you are living in a world that was fundamentally shaped by Ted Turner's chaotic, brilliant mind.
He left an indelible mark on both our cultural and physical landscape.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today.
Ted Turner essentially created two wildly opposing legacies. His media creation, CNN, fundamentally accelerated our world.
It created a constant ravenous demand for breaking news, arguably shortening our collective attention spans and highlighting our political and social divisions.
In that world, everything is urgent, all the time. But his environmental work, that was entirely about patience.
It was about slowing down, removing the wires, and quietly, meticulously repairing the physical earth over decades and centuries.
The creator of instant gratification versus the master of long-term ecological patience. Which of these two wildly opposing legacies will ultimately have the greatest impact on our future?
It is a question without an easy answer, just like the man himself.
They divorced. He died. And 25 years later, the love she still held for the pirate who swept into her life broke everyone's heart.
You have been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture.
Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.